I am James Mitchell, a man who once believed absolutely in my family. I love my wife, Sophie, and always thought we had a happy life together. But then, things began to change, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. With each passing day, I felt something was off. Sophie stopped spending time with our family like she used to. Sometimes she'd come home late, and many evenings she was just absent. She said it was work, but when I tried to ask about the meetings or projects she was involved in, she always dodged my questions. I began to wonder, had her job become an excuse to avoid me? One evening, I decided to check her phone. Every instinct in me screamed not to do it, but the doubts were unbearable. She'd left her phone on the table while she went to shower, and I couldn't resist. As I scrolled through her messages, one name kept popping up, Ryan. I'd heard about him before, but I never thought anything suspicious of it. I opened one of the messages. "We're still on for this weekend, right? I miss you." My heart stopped. I couldn't believe my eyes. I told myself it had to be a misunderstanding. But as I went through more messages, they all carried the same tone, warm, intimate, and filled with promises of evenings together after work. My suspicions had become undeniable truths. My chest tightened, and my mind reeled. It felt like my world was collapsing beneath me. I couldn't believe Sophie had betrayed me with an old friend. The humiliation consumed me as I thought of Ryan, someone I had once considered a friend. How could I not have noticed Sophie's changes earlier? How could I have missed all the signs? For a moment, I wanted to confront Sophie right then and there. But I stopped myself. I needed to be certain. I needed clear evidence to avoid doing something I'd regret. I decided to observe her for a few more days to see if she would continue hiding things from me. I couldn't let myself be fooled anymore. The following days were filled with unbearable tension. Every time Sophie left the house, a wave of anxiety washed over me. The unanswered calls and texts were like living in a nightmare. One day, Sophie told me she had to meet a business partner to discuss a big project. But I noticed something different. She dressed up more than usual, did her makeup, and styled her hair before leaving. The reason for her frequent outings had become obvious. She was meeting Ryan. As soon as she left, I decided to follow her. I couldn't just sit at home anymore. I needed to know the truth. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about the consequences of my actions. I only knew I had to find clarity. I drove behind her, keeping a safe distance, trying not to be noticed. She drove to a suburban area, stopping at a small cafe. I parked discreetly and watched. Not long after, Ryan arrived. They greeted each other warmly and sat down at a secluded corner table. They didn't realize I was watching. Every touch, every smile they exchanged felt like a knife stabbing into my heart. I could hardly breathe. Their closeness, their comfort with each other, it was undeniable. They were in love. Rage surged through me, but so did an indescribable pain and humiliation. I sat there, watching them, consumed by a single thought. I had been betrayed, not just by my wife, but by a friend. Ryan was someone I had trusted, someone I had welcomed into family gatherings, someone I had shared stories with at dinner parties. Now, I saw I had been nothing but a joke to him. When I returned home, my mind was spinning. I had to confront Sophie and face the truth. But how could I look at her without betraying the pain in my eyes? I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. The truth couldn't stay hidden any longer. One question burned in my mind. How would I confront Sophie and Ryan? How could I face them without losing everything? I entered the house with a heavy heart, my hands still trembling with tension. Sophie wasn't in the living room. She was probably in her study, where she often went to check emails and work on new projects. As I stepped in, the dim light from her desk lamp illuminated her phone, still lying on the table. Everything around me seemed to slow down. Every sound faded until I could hear only my own breath. With renewed determination, I picked up the phone, not out of suspicion, but to find the truth. My mind felt clouded, but I knew this was necessary. Another message appeared on the screen, but this time it wasn't from Ryan. It was from someone else. The name made my blood boil instantly. Megan, a former colleague of Sophie's. The message was short but shattered my world. I miss you. Don't let James find out about us. My heart twisted painfully. Megan? She was involved too? I couldn't believe it. All the words I'd ever spoken about trusting Sophie echoed mockingly in my head. The betrayal was overwhelming, and I couldn't keep calm anymore. The world felt like it had flipped upside down. I sank into a chair, still holding Sophie's phone, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. Ryan, and now Megan. They had all deceived me. How long had I been living in this web of lies? When had everything gone so wrong? And why would Sophie do this? Unable to sit with the shame and pain any longer, I stood and walked to her study, a space filled with familiar family mementos. Sophie often worked there in the evenings, but tonight wasn't about work. Everything was about to change forever. The office door creaked open, and I saw Sophie bent over her computer. She didn't notice me enter. The room was silent except for the faint clacking of her keyboard. I took a deep breath before speaking. Sophie. She flinched, turning to face me, her eyes wide with surprise and a hint of confusion. James, you're back? Her voice was soft, but I could hear the edge of unease. I didn't give her time to gather herself. I stepped closer and placed her phone on the desk in front of her. What is this? I asked, unable to suppress the anger swelling in my chest. Sophie froze, her eyes darting to the phone screen. A moment of silence filled the room. I could see the fear flicker in her eyes, but then something like defiance replaced it. James, I can explain, she said, though her voice wavered. It's not what you think. But I didn't want to hear her explanations. I couldn't stomach any more excuses. I'd seen enough. That feeling, when you know the truth but still have to endure hearing the lies, is a storm that I couldn't contain. Don't bother. I've seen everything, I replied coldly, my voice trembling with restrained fury. It's all clear now. Sophie began apologizing, her words tumbling out in a rush, but nothing she said could quell the fire burning inside me. Her stammering, her empty excuses, they meant nothing. I was done with promises, apologies, and especially the betrayal she had inflicted on me. I turned away, walking out of the room, unwilling to hear another word. Sophie called after me, but I didn't look back. It felt like someone else was driving my body, and all I could do was keep moving away from her. I found myself in the living room, everything around me collapsing. The pain, the anger, the profound sense of loss, it was suffocating. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Ryan. His name echoed in my mind, the so-called friend I once treated as family. Where was he? I couldn't let this end here. Both of them had shattered everything I believed in, and they had to face the consequences. But how? I didn't have an answer yet. My thoughts churned, and a plan for revenge began to take shape, detail by detail. I couldn't just sit idly by while they continued their lives as if nothing had happened. Sophie and Ryan would have to pay for what they had taken from me. When Sophie came to find me, I was already gone. The house, once a place I thought of as a home, now stood in silence, heavy with the weight of betrayal. I didn't know what to do with the storm of emotions inside me. My world had crumbled in just a few hours. Every step I took felt aimless, a desperate search for something familiar to hold on to, but everything had been destroyed. Sophie's betrayal left me feeling like I had lost everything. As I looked back on the past few days, memories flooded my mind, our laughter, cozy evenings as a family, short but meaningful vacations filled with moments of joy. How could something so seemingly perfect have unraveled so completely? Everything had seemed fine, yet the truth was hidden right in front of me, beyond my ability to see. I stood in the living room, staring blankly at the clock on the wall, unable to focus. Sophie was no longer there. She must have left the room at some point, leaving me with nothing but silence and the crushing weight of my emotions. In my mind, one thought remained clear. I needed to confront Ryan. He had to pay. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Sophie. Her voice was shaky, but it wasn't fear of me, it was guilt. "James, I can't let this end like this. You need to understand, it's not what you think." I couldn't contain my frustration. A coldness spread through me as I replied, "Not what I think? What does that even mean, Sophie? I've seen everything, and you're still trying to justify it?" Silence followed. All I could hear was her unsteady breathing on the other end. Then she said something that hit me like a hammer. "You don't understand. What we had, it hasn't been the same for a long time." Her words were a blow. The truth in them was undeniable, but I didn't want to believe it. I had dedicated my life to our relationship. We had built a family, a future. And now, all I was left with was betrayal. Sophie's love for me had faded, and everything I thought we shared had been a lie. "I don't need any more excuses, Sophie. There's nothing left for you to explain," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I ended the call and walked out the door, unwilling to hear another apology. As I drove through familiar streets, every turn reminded me of happier times. All of it was gone now. I no longer saw the family photos on the walls or heard the laughter of our daughter, Lily. I had lost everything, and I couldn't let it end with just an apology. Ryan, his name kept ringing in my head. I had to see him. That was all I could focus on. He wasn't just a betrayer. He was someone I had once trusted. He needed to face the consequences. When I arrived at Ryan's house, my heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I felt a surge of determination. This was my moment to reclaim everything I'd lost, not just my family, but my dignity. I stood in his front yard, looking at the lit window. Ryan had didn't knock on the door. I didn't need an invitation to make him face me. I knew that once I stepped inside, nothing would ever be the same again. Circling around to the back, I found a small window slightly ajar, just enough for me to climb through. At that moment, reason no longer mattered. I only wanted to confront the truth and make my decision. As I entered, I saw Ryan sitting on the sofa, and behind him was a wall adorned with an old family photo, a picture we had taken together during one of my birthdays. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. That photo, once a symbol of friendship, now felt like a monument to betrayal. Ryan noticed me and jumped to his feet. "James, it's not what you think." I didn't let him finish. "Not what I think?" I shot back, my voice sharp with anger. "Then what do you call all the messages, the secret meetings with my wife? You didn't just betray me, Ryan. You destroyed my family." He stepped back, his face pale, his eyes filled with fear. "James, I'm sorry." I didn't want his apology. It held no value to me anymore. In my eyes, Ryan wasn't my friend, he was my enemy. I stepped closer, unable to contain myself any longer. My fist collided with his face, sending him sprawling onto the floor. The punch didn't bring relief, it only left me feeling emptier than before. Ryan stayed on the ground, groaning in pain, unable to respond. I knew there was nothing else I could do or say to make this right. He had done something unforgivable, and now I stood at a crossroads. I've lost my family because of you, I said coldly, my voice heavy with anger and resentment. And I won't let you walk away from this unscathed. I turned and walked out, leaving Ryan on the floor of his hollow house. It felt like the start of an endless night. What I had done couldn't be undone, but I knew this was only the beginning, a path filled with difficult choices and consequences I couldn't predict. One thing was certain, I wasn't going to stop. The rage and betrayal still clung to me, even as I got back into my car. Every glance at the rearview mirror showed the reflection of a man I barely recognized. I was no longer James Mitchell, the husband, the father, the man who worked tirelessly to keep his family together. I was a man betrayed, with only one goal left, revenge. That night, I couldn't sleep. My entire body felt taut, as if the anger was building with every passing moment. I didn't just want to ruin Ryan's life. A part of me wanted Sophie to feel everything I was experiencing. This pain couldn't just come and go. If I had to endure it, so would they. Plans began to form in my mind, step by calculated step. I wasn't impulsive. I didn't want to act in a way that would leave me exposed. But I knew the truth couldn't stay buried for long. Ryan would pay for what he had done, and I would ensure he lost everything, just as I had lost my family. I started by undermining Ryan's reputation at work. I'd known for a while that he was ambitious, always striving for promotions, but I also knew he hadn't earned his current position through hard work. I began exposing his weaknesses, carefully leaking minor mistakes and discrepancies I knew about to his superiors. I made anonymous calls to key people in his company, planting doubts about his competence. It wasn't drastic, but it was enough to erode their trust in him. As for Sophie, she would face the consequences of her actions too. I never imagined I'd do this, but I had nothing left to lose. She needed to learn that life couldn't simply go on as if nothing had happened. I reached out to her close friends, the ones she considered her inner circle, subtly planting seeds of doubt about her character. I hinted at her affair with Ryan, weaving it into casual conversations. I didn't need to provide proof, just enough whispers to make them question her. Everything was going according to plan, but part of me felt like I was losing myself. I didn't know how this would end, but every time I looked in the mirror, I saw nothing but a cold stranger staring back at me. Still, I had made my decision. This revenge was how I would reclaim control over my life. Early one morning, I received an unexpected call from Sophie. I didn't know why she was calling, but I picked up. All I felt was exhaustion, as if this conversation was just another part of the process. "James, I want to meet. We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I could hear the anxiety in her tone, the fear of what she knew I might do. "Talk?" I replied, my voice icy. "We have nothing to talk about, Sophie. It's all clear now. You've hurt me more than I ever thought possible." Her silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of her unsteady breathing. Finally, she spoke again, her voice soft and weak. "You can't just ignore me forever, James. You can't just walk away like this." I felt an odd mix of pain and detachment. Between the hurt and the cold resolve, all I could feel was emptiness. But I knew one thing, I wasn't done. If I stopped now, everything would have been for nothing. "I don't have to listen to anything you say," I said firmly. "Not anymore. Be inside." "You left first," I interrupted coldly. "You left the moment you chose to betray me. What's left is just me and the decisions I have to face." She was silent for a moment, perhaps unsure of what to say. Finally, she sighed and hung up. I didn't feel relief, nor satisfaction. All that remained was an emptiness, as if I had lost something vital that could never be recovered. Right after the call, I decided to take a critical step in my plan. I would confront Ryan one more time. Not to hit him again, not to do anything drastic. simply to make sure he understood that he couldn't move on so easily. I had mapped out this meeting, and I was determined to ensure he realized that I was the last person he ever wanted as an enemy. As I stood outside Ryan's front door, my heart began to pound. This conversation would be a turning point. I knew everything would change after this moment. Standing there, I felt neither excitement nor anticipation. Only a hollow sense of inevitability, as though I had stepped onto a path with no way back. Everything felt poised at a crossroads, and I had no idea where my life would lead from here. I knocked on the door. Footsteps approached from inside, and soon the door opened. Ryan stood there, his eyes red, likely from the pain of the punch I'd delivered days earlier. But this time, there was no defiance or arrogance. His expression was filled with fear. "James," he said, his voice trembling. "I don't know what to say. I'm sorry." I stood motionless, saying nothing. His apology was meaningless to me now. His regret held no value. It was far too late for that. "I don't need your apology," I said, my voice cold as ice. "What you need to understand is that what you've done will never be forgotten." Ryan opened his mouth as if to respond, but stopped short, remaining silent. He stood there, powerless to resist. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need to do anything more. I had done enough to ensure he understood the cost of his betrayal. But I also didn't want to be the kind of person who destroyed others' lives, even if they deserved it. "I didn't come here to hurt you again," I continued, my tone now softer. "I just wanted you to know that I'm done. I don't need revenge anymore. I just need this to end so I can move on." I turned and walked away from his house without looking back. A strange sense of relief washed over me, but it was accompanied by an inexplicable emptiness. My life had completely changed, but not in the way I had hoped. Revenge hadn't brought me peace, it had only made me feel more hollow. When I returned home, I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. I couldn't blame Sophie or Ryan anymore. They had done what they believed was right in those moments, but now I understood that every action comes with consequences. Sometimes, actions born of anger only bring more pain. And I had learned this lesson the hard way. Sophie wasn't home when I arrived. She had left, taking her belongings and the memories with her, leaving only silence behind. I no longer wanted to find her, apologize, or hear her explanations. She had chosen her path, and now I had to choose mine. As for me, I decided to start over. To leave behind all the pain and hatred. I wouldn't let those feelings control my life anymore. No matter how difficult it was, no matter how much I had to wrestle with myself, I wouldn't let the past drag me down. Life would go on. I would continue working, taking care of Lily, and finding myself again. I didn't need a relationship to feel whole. I wouldn't return to Sophie, nor would I regret my decision to leave her. All I needed was a chance to rebuild from the shattered pieces of who I once was. Revenge doesn't bring peace. Nothing can change the past, and holding on to anger only deepens the wounds. Sometimes, forgiveness isn't for others, it's for ourselves, so we can live without being enslaved by the past. I didn't need Sophie or Ryan's forgiveness. I just needed to forgive myself and learn how to move forward. And that is the end of this story.